Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to an HIMediaTV review through I Can't Shut Up Unless You Tell Me to. Today, I want to talk to you about Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince. Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince. The next in many of the eclectic games from the Dragon Quest Monsters series, a series that 2/3 of the games in that series have never been released in the West, to the chagrin and sorrows of many Western Dragon Quest Monsters fans, such as myself. Now, I know that many of you might write this game off as a Pokemon clone. Some would argue that Pokemon stole designs from Dragon Quest. Makes sense, given how prolific Dragon Quest is and has been and continues to be within the country of Japan. But we're not going to bring that Pow World slop into this concept of IP and shenanigans. We're talking about a fun, deep, and robust creature collection sim that I personally love the format of more than I ever loved, than I do continue to love Pokemon. And while I do continue to love Pokemon, Dragon Quest Monsters is a superior franchise. But now the spiel is out of the way, let's get to the game with the brass tacks. We're going to be covering a few different aspects of it, which can be categorized into the following: story, world, level design, and mechanics. Okay, so, and we're going to wrap it up with some criticisms and an overall general score. Starting with the story. The story of Dragon Quest Monster: The Dark Prince is a parallel/retelling of Dragon Quest VI. So, if you wanted to play a game in anticipation of this game, or just kind of have that fresh in your mind, so the story beats are like, aha, I remember that, go give Dragon Quest VI a shot. Definitely a lovely time. Great story. I played it. I was never able to beat it as a child, unfortunately, but I think if I gave it a shot today, I'd do a marketable amount better. Excuse me. It's late when I'm recording this, but by and large, you are a half monster, half human person by the name of Sorrow, who basically, because of a bunch of unfortunate ordeals, pledged to kill your father, the tyrant, the demon lord, basically. And you meander your way through the different circles of Naderia being a stand-in for the demon world here, where Terrestia is the human world. And you start in a little town called Rosehill, a throwback, where and through shenanigans and the help of some friends, you gain access to the ability to teleport your base of operations, Rosehill Tower, to the different circles of Naderia, the lower, middle, and upper. I will not be talking about the story too much, even though I think it is. If I were to give the story a break, I would say it is serviceable. It is nice. It gets you somewhat mostly invested. If not, if even though it does the telltale thing of, yes, you technically might have choice here. It looks like you have choice, but in reality, you got nothing. We're railroading you on this bitch, and you don't get a chase, and there's no branching storylines. But aside from that, the characters are interesting, and the motivations are clear. And you feel somewhat good, at least, by the end of it. Moving on to the world building, though. And I know that we were relatively brief on the story. I think it's because most of this is going to be done for the mechanics, which is done third. Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince. Most of the game takes place in the... hold on. 1, 2, 3... Wait, there's a circle of conquest, circle of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think the 5 to 6 different circles of Nadiria, which are the circle of conquest, the circle of temper, the circle of fortification, the circle of caprice, and the circle of indulgence. So that was conquest 1, temper 2, indulgence 3, caprice 4, 6. Including the circle of fortification, I think it's called, and the circle of corruption. So 6. And each of these circles have 3 different echelons, and that includes the lower, middle, and upper. The lion's share of the game, early before you get to the middle echelons where the game kind of picks up in difficulty, you can kind of just get a team, play around and enjoy yourself. The only circle that is kind of doesn't feel super unique echelon to echelon is the circle of indulgence, which is basically a giant candy land all the way through, which it's kind of hard to vary that. It's just a new environment with that aesthetic. But the different in the circle of in the lower, middle, and upper echelons of the circle of conquest kind of look just like Demon World shenanigans, but the world design is outside of those two is fairly unique. Even the circles of corruption, which just gives off vibes of deep, dank tunnels and temples, has its own unique aspects to it as well. One of the things I really enjoy about things is probably the circle of caprice, which is probably the most varied of the circles. The lower circle of caprice looks like a tropical ruin, budding resort kind of area for monsters. The middle area is a giant desert, with desert with sands as far as the eye can see. And the top one is just, a mildly crumbling but nonetheless awe-inspiring, rotunda with a giant temple on the end. It's quite wonderful. Same thing with the circle of fortification. It has this very brutalist industrial aesthetic and quality to it, and all throughout the levels, but to different, stages. The base level is generally it gives the vibe of a dump, where the refuse is given. The middle echelon gives vibes of a factory and a storehouse where things are developed for battles of war. And then the upper echelon is just a giant fortress of quite aptly named Fort Knox, spelled Nox. Other ones like the circle of temper it's the fire themed area, which you think doesn't really have a lot of variance, but you'd be surprised. The rock formations and the vibrant citizenry that live there is pretty compelling. You think that lava and rocks flowing everywhere wouldn't lead to inspiring level design, at least varied compared to the others, but you'd be surprised. Yes, there's some similarities with it, but the lava flows look different. They do have a lot of quarries, ancient statuettes, and filling into the landscape, and oddly tropical plants all throughout. It's quite the wonderful experience. The later game areas like the Whispering Woods are interesting within themselves, albeit a bit linear, and even Terrestria having the starting game area that you traipse through for the tutorial and whenever you need to catch a Cyclops, or scout a Cyclops rather. The variance of the different world zones is wonderful and compelling, and by itself is worthy of the romp, and makes me excited every time I get to go to a new circle. I get to see something new and pretty and explore something different. It's very, and I can't remember the last time I haven't felt that since I played Pokemon games when I was a kid, and I felt that as an adult, and that was meaningful to me. But now that we're here, past a 1.5-minute intro and 9.5 minutes of me spieling about the story and the world and the map design. Let's get into the meat and potatoes, the mechanics. So, imagine, my friends, EV/IV training in Pokemon, but you don't have to deal with the bullshit. What do I mean by the bullshit? You see, the thing is that Dragon Quest Monsters is big boy Pokemon, and it's big boy Pokemon because all of the echelons that I talked about, there's bosses at the end of them. And as you get further and further in the game, you can't just take the monster you got in the beginning from, your old man friend who runs the monster synthesis altar for you. We'll get to that in a moment. You have to train your monsters up. You have to synthesize them into new monsters, meaning taking 2 monsters and turning them into 1. And you have to be mindful of their traits, their talents, and their talent points. Let's break it all down, shall we? You can take a monster of the Beast family and the Nature family, and you can get a specific monster. There are familial trees that you can keep track of with both within game and online that allow you to go from having, a bunch of F rank, which is the lowest rank monsters, and collecting everything slowly but surely, and being able to get a giant, S rank powerhouse. You must be wondering, what am I alluding to with all of this? Well, the fact of the matter is that everything that's annoying about Pokemon EV/IV training, making meta, creatures and stuff, is stripped away here in Dragon Quest Monsters. And while you do have the grindy, nitpicky nature of creating monsters, if you actually enjoy that, what the nice part about this is that there is one singular point of gap between just synthesizing all your monsters into whatever you want, and that is a level 10 requirement. You have to have them at level 10 to synthesize them. And arguably, you don't want to have them at level 10 because whenever you do synthesize a monster, they lose half their talent points. So the higher level it is, the more talent points they'll carry over with them, which can get kind of insane later when you have all your skills are filled up. But here's how Dragon Quest Monsters works with the meta stuff, right? Which is the fun. Not only are you encouraged, is the game encourage you to partake in monster synthesis and mindful breeding of your monsters, you have to. There are certain points that you get walled and you are incapable of moving forward. Therefore, you have to synthesize new monsters and raise them up if you want to be able to beat the game. Now, I will say this. You can get away with a decently trained monster team of all B rank and beat the final boss of the main game. Not handedly, but if you have a team and a backup team of that, you'll do fine. Yeah, there's a backup team. So imagine if you were playing Pokemon and you had a team of 6 Pokemon, and then all those fuckers died, and then you had 6 more in a backup roster. That's one of the things that's here with Dragon Quest Monsters. The Dark Prince. The monsters are effectively based into a couple different things. They have their normal skills. They in regards to their talents, some get based off, which you can get either by catching them, by scouting them, and leveling those up, or you can, when you synthesize a monster, you pick the talents they have. Not only do you pick when you synthesize a monster, you get to see all the possible synthesis options you have with that particular combination, including a star ranking of their attack, defense, agility and wisdom and magic points and health points, and seeing how those rank with star ranks from 1 to 5. And on top of that, you also get to see their traits. Traits being things such as Poisoner, meaning your more poison attacks are more likely to hit, or Banger, or Ultra Crafty Banger, which lowers the cost and increases the damage of bang attacks. Bang being a type of magic that makes things explode, or a Bang Meister, which basically is the same thing, as Ultra Crafty Banger, except the numbers are reversed. You do have the cost reduction is there but lesser, and the damage boost is there but larger. It's vice versa with the Ultra Banger. And then you have, and then these traits you can use to inform what type of monster you want to build with them. So if you are building towards a B rank monster that you want to use on your team to ride out the game, well, you would, if you know what route you got to take, you can do proper planning and say get a Haxorus, which is a attacking heavy one, and you can get that with I'd say Hulk, which and give it access to some like or Slasher maybe, and just get it some access to some like physical based attacks that with some MP. You give it attack booster 4 and attack booster 3, and now it's hitting like a fucking freight train. Oh yeah, you can have up to 3 talents at one time. The talents that I mentioned earlier, you get talent points of varying amounts at different levels. By the time you hit level 13, you have approximately 48 talent points you get, and by the time you hit level 30, I believe you have upwards of 90. Usually, in my experience, a good time to synthesize a monster is when they hit around, the best time, arguably, would be when they hit around level 40. You don't have to wait that long, especially if you already have a surplus of talent points, but the longer you wait to synthesize a monster, the more talent points it will accrue, which means the less investment you have to put into getting a monster up to battle ready. Because talents can be maxed out from anywhere from 85 points to 200 points, so it can take a little while. You combine the talents with the traits, and also with, are they good? Do they have a lot of wisdom? Do they have a lot of MP? Do they have a lot of HP? Are they going to be a tank? Are they going to be a wizard? Are they going to be an attacker? Are they going to be a bulky attacker? A healer? What are you going to use them for? It really does depend. I found that having a King Cure Slime on my team with an Omni Heal is absolutely one of the most beneficial things to have on a team, especially late game, especially post game. But that's neither here nor there. We'll get into that later. The other thing I want to talk about is you also have sizes. You have a few different. You have the normal size of small, but those smalls you'll see small, medium small, large small. If you combine a couple large smalls together, if you combine large smalls together in the right combinations, you can make a monster large. What happens when a monster is large? Well, they get 3 more traits. Usually one of those traits is multi-attacker, meaning that they have a chance to attack multiple times in a turn, anywhere from one extra time to 3 extra times per turn. It can be absolutely disgusting on the right one. With the downside of you are reduced by 1 slot as far as monsters you can bring with us. Reminder, you can have 4 small monsters or 2 large monsters, or any combination of the 2. So you can either have 2 monsters, 3 monsters, or 4 monsters, depending on the size. I know while in certain environments having all small monsters is probably for the best, don't be asleep on the large monsters either. If you're able to effectively synthesize a powerful large monster, it will be a boon. Having those 3 extra traits are a godsend and can be done for quite a lot of shenanigans. Regardless, the amount of options available to you in this game, as far as the synthesis goes, is wonderful. This was my first game in this series, Dragon Quest Monsters Joker, was a very difficult experience as a child. I did not understand as a kid that I needed to synthesize monsters and make them a certain way until I was very much in the end game and blowing my head against a brick wall and being frustrated at my constantly dying. I finally beat it and then got to the end game proper and was woefully under prepared, and I stopped. Which is kind of what happened with the Dragon Quest Monsters of the Dark Prince. Now, that being said, there are many online connectivity features available to me that I I didn't have access to back during the Dragon Quest Monsters Joker days. Primarily because I didn't understand how to put Wi-Fi into a 3DS. I missed out on the connectivity of Pokemon Platinum and Black and White, and my god, I was so... In hindsight, I wish I had known how to do it, because I would have had so much fun as a child, but... No use in lamenting for the unfortunities of the past. But it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, regardless of that, the Dragon Quest Monsters, the Dark Prince, is a compelling story with some of the most robust systems that kind of force you to engage with them to progress the story, but remove so much of the cumbersome, annoying elements of building up a team that metagaming like this doesn't feel like a chore as it does in other creature collector games like Pokemon. I think it's quite lovely, if I'm being honest. And if you enjoyed competitive Pokemon or competitive training of Pokemon in any capacity, you'll like this. It's a excellent single player romp that you will enjoy and will scratch that itch in a meaningful way, and at the end of the day, you will I think have a great time. Let's talk about some of the negatives I feel about the game, though, if I'm being honest. Obviously, because of how little I said about the story, I don't necessarily think super high of it. I think I think some of the plot points are kind of contrived, and the motivations of the character, while understandable, don't make a whole ton of sense, all things considered. I think that the propensity of the main character to be evil, especially early on, at least evil in the eyes of the story, it feels kind of railroaded to be evil in a way, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but I think it makes sense as a cohesive picture, but other times I'm just questioning behavior and decisions that just don't make sense, but that's just me. Maybe it's lost in translation. All in all, Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince is an excellent experience that anybody who has enjoyed, that adult Pokemon fans who have experienced some level of the competitive scene would absolutely enjoy. And while that is a small number, I know that at least a few of you listening are interested in that. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to this episode of I Can't Shut Up Unless You Tell Me To. I really liked The Dark Prince. It was a wonderfully fantastic time. I will say that I think my biggest criticism of the game has less to do with the game itself and more the community. The community, being this is a game that encourages power gaming, I went into one online match and got absolutely destroyed. This was at the lowest rank, by the way, of people. Dragon Quest Monsters fans are built different, and while I absolutely enjoy the game for its PvE notions, the PvP stuff is something I am engaged in. And lastly, I think my last criticism that I wanted to say that I didn't say before the outro was, there's really not much to do after the game has been beaten. Yes, you have, some PvE coliseums that you can engage in, and you have the online connectivity stuff like duels, automated battles, tournaments, all that stuff. That's great, but There's a level of time investment for that I am not a fan of. The other thing I'm kind of not a huge fan of is that this feels like the type of game that should be a cohesive whole. And there are, I think, 4 separate DLCs for this game that cost $10 a piece. And I don't know, just having to spend $80, $100 total to get the entire full experience of the game is rough. One of the DLCs being something called the Mole Hole, which is a throwback to Dragon Quest Monsters 2, which, I'm a little hurt on. I will say that the choice of that is, of having a really useful concept of a place where you can just go in and scout monsters you've previously scouted with guaranteed odds of them showing up. I think having that in the base game would have been lovely, and now that I've completed the game and I know its experience, outside of maybe the dungeon DLCs, I don't really feel compelled to want them and play them. It feels kind of like something I should have had initially and I didn't, and I kind of resent that on some level. But it's not like I have the money at the moment to get them anyways. I don't think any of these negativities detract from the game too much. It's still an obvious recommend to go buy and play if you like creature collectors, especially more difficult ones, but regardless. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you, your time, and your listenership, and I will see you guys next time. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. If you want to support the show, please consider going to HIMedia.gg/donate and, become a channel supporter. You get access to early access content, among other things. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you guys next time.